When you think of the Crusades, you probably think of bloodthirsty barbarians that would murder anything and anyone. Due to certain movies, the Crusaders have often been represented wrongly, and that's why I'm creating this video to show you why Crusaders were actually pretty awesome. Let's hop back to the year 600, way before the First Crusade. Check out this map of the Christian world back then. See those highlighted areas? That's where Christianity was in charge. Wait a sec. Is that the Middle East and North Africa? Yup, it sure is. Nowadays, we think of those places as Muslim lands, but that wasn't always the case. So, here's the backstory. Christianity started spreading like wildfire after Emperor Constantine the Great gave it the green light with the Edict of Milan. It took over both the Western and Eastern Roman empires. Even when the Western Empire crumbled to barbarians, Christianity held strong, and many of those barbarians eventually hopped on the Christian train. Now, let's talk about the Middle East and North Africa. In the mid-600s, a bunch of warlords from the Arabian Peninsula decided to go on a conquering spree. They brought Islam with them, but unlike the European barbarians, they didn't convert to Christianity. The Middle East was a big deal at the time, with two major powers, the Christian Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantine Empire, and the Zoroastrian Sassanid Empire. These two had just finished duking it out in a 25-year-long war and had exhausted themselves. As a result, they were sitting ducks when the Islamic wave hit. The Byzantines lost Africa and the Levant, and the Sassanid Empire completely fell apart. But the real kicker was losing the Holy Land. By 900 AD, Islam had conquered all the way to France and southern Italy. Now, I'm not here to pass judgment on conquests and wars of expansion. History's full of them. But Islam had this thing called jihad, or holy war, inspired by their conquering hero, Muhammad. They took slaves, and this practice carried on for centuries, leading to slavery being common in the Islamic world even today. So, what's worse? They invaded Christian lands. Christians in these conquered territories got the short end of the stick. They were treated as second-class citizens, many ended up as slaves, and they had to cough up a hefty tax called the demi-tax. Plus, their churches often got shut down. Over time, Christianity in the Middle East and North Africa went from being the majority to a tiny minority. But it gets even worse. Islamic piracy was a major buzzkill for trade in the Mediterranean. The Romans had done a stellar job stamping out piracy and making the seas safe for commerce. But Islamic pirates from North Africa and the Middle East turned the Mediterranean into a danger zone. This killed off European trade and made life miserable for almost 400 years. While Europe suffered, Islam was having its so-called golden age, all at Christianity's expense. This is why many call the years from 600 AD to 1000 AD Europe's Dark Ages. Fast forward to the 1000s, and things started to heat up. Islamic caliphates in Iberia, Spain, decided to push north, conquering and wreaking havoc. That's when the Reconquista kicked off, as Christian kingdoms in Iberia decided it was time to take back their land from Islam. Over in the east, the Seljuk Turks, a Central Asian Muslim group, decided to crash the party in Anatolia. They conquered Armenia, sacked cities, and changed the demographics by bringing in more Turks. Meanwhile, the Byzantine Empire was getting hit hard and couldn't handle the Seljuk onslaught. Enter Emperor Alexius Comnenus, who made a desperate plea to the Pope and Western Christendom for help. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Even though the Eastern and Western Christian worlds had been feuding for almost half a century, they decided to put their differences aside because the threat from the Seljuk Turks was just that serious. Plus, the Turks had started messing with Christian pilgrims in the Holy Land, ticking off a lot of folks. This was the perfect storm that led to the First Crusade being called. When you think about it in context, it doesn't seem all that crazy. Catholic Europeans saw Islam as a major threat. By this time, Europe's elites were getting richer and smarter, understanding the gravity of the situation. Europe was becoming more connected and safer than it had been in centuries, so they could finally see just how much damage Islam had done. So, in 1095, Pope Urban II made the call for the First Crusade. He urged Christians to help their brethren in the East, who were in dire need. It was a rallying cry to unite against a common enemy, putting an end to internal Christian conflicts. And boy, did people answer the call. Peasants, knights, kings, everyone from different backgrounds and nationalities signed up to fight for Christendom. What's truly remarkable is how the Catholic Church managed to unite Europeans of all kinds under one faith, with one goal. It hadn't happened before, and it hasn't happened since. Not every crusade was a smashing success, but you have to appreciate the logistics and challenges crusaders faced. The First Crusade, for instance, was a massive win. They conquered Jerusalem, a feat that hadn't happened in centuries. They even established crusader states that held onto the Middle East for 100 years. Some crusades, like the Sixth, had diplomatic victories, like peacefully retaking Jerusalem. So, when some folks say the Crusades failed, did they really? Europe was Christian then, and it's still mostly Christian today, even though it's getting more secular. Funny enough, Christianity started to decline in Europe only after the Pope lost the power to call crusades. In the grand scheme of things, when we look back at the Crusades, they're not a shameful chapter of Catholic history. Nope. Quite the opposite. They were a defense of Christendom and a demonstration of unity against common threats. And that's why, my friends, the Crusades were pretty darn cool. Thanks for tuning in. If you want more videos like this, consider supporting the channel. And don't forget to drop a comment with your thoughts. See you in the next one.